Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling heavier than when it began? Not because someone shouted, insulted, or humiliated you, but simply because they left you with a sense of fatigue, doubt, or negativity. The kind of feeling that drains your motivation, clouds your clarity, and worse, makes you lose yourself. In this age, where people can reach you 24/7 through texts, social media, or enticing invitations, the most important reminder from Stoic philosophy is this: be vigilant about who you allow into your mind. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Not everyone who speaks gently is worthy of your trust. And sometimes, the people you most need to distance yourself from are the very ones closest to you in daily life. Today, I will share with you 11 types of people that Stoic philosophy advises you to never place your trust in. Not to hate them, but to protect yourself. 1. The Perpetual Victim. The one who always plays the victim needs no enemy to fail. Their own mindset binds them to suffering. They live in a world where everything is against them. Unfair jobs, unsympathetic family, a society that lacks compassion. And the danger is, they don't say this to seek solutions. They say it to gain sympathy, to be affirmed that misery is their inescapable fate. They don't want anyone to fix their life. They just want someone to listen and nod. You really are unfortunate. I once knew someone like that. Every meeting began with a sigh and ended with a long list of people who had hurt them. No matter how much advice you gave, it was brushed off with the same reply: nothing ever changes. They rejected action, rejected responsibility, and rejected hope. They didn't live in the present, but in an endless indictment where they were the eternal victim of circumstances, fate, and other people. If you stay close to them long enough, you'll start to see the world through their lens. You'll second-guess yourself every time you make a mistake, blame someone else when things go wrong, and wait for some vague justice instead of acting. That's when you lose your own agency. And worse, you quietly become another version of them, bitter, blaming, and powerless in your own life. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the only thing truly ours is our response to what happens. Life doesn't choose us to be victims. We choose to live like one. And when you believe you have no choice, you'll remain locked in a cage built not by others, but by yourself from the inside. No one can free you but you. So if someone around you constantly blames others, is hurt by the whole world, and refuses responsibility, keep your distance. Not because you lack compassion, but because your peace cannot be the foundation for someone who refuses to stand up. 2. The Gossipmonger. Gossip. A word that sounds light, yet its consequences burn like a slow fire, consuming the foundation of trust. The gossipmonger doesn't shout, threaten, or show malice outright. They often appear friendly, cloaked in private conversations and seemingly caring questions. But the truth is, they don't speak to understand, they speak to spread. Not to help, but to control the narrative, steer emotions, and feed an invisible hunger to possess information. I had a friend like that. She always knew the backstage drama, who just broke up, who's in financial trouble, who's keeping secrets from the boss. At first, it felt entertaining, like I was in the center of a dramatic world. But over time, I noticed every conversation ended with judgment. And one day, I heard someone repeat what I had said, but through another mouth, the story had twisted. I stayed silent and realized nothing stays confidential when spoken to someone who turns words into weapons. The real danger in gossipers lies not just in what they say, but in how they erode your ability to trust. They plant the idea that anyone could be two-faced, that everything is suspect, and that you can't be genuine with anyone. They make you withdraw, close up, and build walls even against those who deserve your openness. Gradually, you don't just doubt others. You begin to doubt yourself, your words, your actions, and you live in a world where everything can be distorted. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." This isn't just moral advice. It's a subtle warning. Every minute spent talking about others is a minute stolen from focusing on yourself. Gossip thrives in shallow minds because those minds are consumed by other people's lives. If you allow yourself to be swept into it, you'll lose your own inner stillness, the foundation of a life guided by reason and virtue in Stoic teaching. Ask yourself, do the conversations you take part in make you better? Do you leave them feeling lighter or more judgmental? If what you hear doesn't help you grow, perhaps it's not information, it's noise. And the one who creates it isn't a friend. They're a mental hazard, a toxic breeze you won't notice until it's stolen your clarity. Choosing silence isn't weakness. It's choosing to live differently, with intention, with boundaries, with dignity. In a noisy world, the one who guards their mind's silence is the strongest, and the one who refuses to listen to gossip has already taken the first step toward living by reason. 3. The envious. There is a type of person you won't easily detect at first. They're not hostile, not confrontational, not loud. But when you share a joy, an achievement, or even a small moment of pride, their eyes pause for a second, their smile misses a beat, and their congratulations lack genuine warmth. That is the envious one, the person who cannot bear others doing better. And instead of learning or finding inspiration, they choose to diminish, question, or ignore your worth. I used to think envy was trivial, just a fleeting feeling we all had. But over time I realized envy is a corrosive energy. It not only ruins human connections, it steals your own faith in what's good. The envious won't celebrate your hard-earned success. They'll say it was luck, that you had connections, or they'll quickly shift the topic to someone else's failure to dilute your moment. They can't be happy for you because in their mind, your joy confirms their lack. The cruel part is envy often hides behind kindness. You might be sharing your pride with someone you believe is a close friend, only to hear your story come back twisted, bitter, and laced with insinuation. When that happens, you don't just feel hurt. You start questioning, was I showing off? Should I have stayed quiet? In a moment, their envy sows doubt within you. Stoicism doesn't teach us to compete with others, but to conquer ourselves. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The envious cannot be happy because they always feel they lack success, recognition, uniqueness. They live not to grow, but to compare. And every time you're near them, you don't just have to protect your success, you have to guard your heart against the guilt of having done well. Envy is a double-edged blade. It cuts the one who holds it, but if you're not careful, it wounds you too. So, observe. If someone can't rejoice in your joy or be proud of your effort, they might not belong beside you on the path of growth. You don't need cheerleaders with confetti, but you deserve companions who don't secretly wish for your stumble just to feel a little taller. Keeping them around isn't kindness, it's self-deception, and a rational person doesn't let that linger too long. 4. The angry one. Some people don't need to raise their voices to make you feel uneasy. A single frown, a fist slammed on the table, or just a seething silence is enough to make the air around them heavy. The chronically angry live in a state of near explosion, and when anger hits, they don't control it. They let it lead. They react rather than reflect, lash out instead of staying calm, and consider this behavior an unchangeable part of who they are. But in Stoic philosophy, anger is not a personality trait. It is a sign of weakness, a failure to master oneself. I once had a co-worker who overreacted to the smallest things, an unanswered email, a vague comment, or even a disapproving glance. Every time he got angry, the shared space became tense, and everyone had to modify their behavior just to avoid triggering him. At first, I thought it wasn't worth stressing over. Everyone gets angry sometimes. But then I realized that constantly being on the defensive, constantly wondering when the next outburst would happen, was draining my energy and peace of mind. That's when I understood. Uncontrolled anger is a form of emotional violence, silent but persistent. Seneca, one of the most profound Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "The best remedy for anger is delay." Because when you slow down, you begin to see what truly deserves a response and what doesn't. But the angry person does the opposite. They react instantly, letting emotion drive their actions, then later regret, apologize, or blame others. And if you're around them long enough, you start to react like them, not because you want to, but because you're swept up in their energy, more irritable, more defensive, and ultimately, less composed. Marcus Aurelius once emphasized, you don't have to have an opinion about something. In the presence of anger, this holds especially true. You are not obligated to match someone else's emotional intensity. You can choose silence, choose not to engage, choose to walk away if needed. But more importantly, you must understand that you cannot heal someone by enduring their anger. You are not responsible for keeping the peace for those who keep breaking it. If someone cannot control their temper, they will eventually try to control you with it. And the most frightening part isn't the yelling. It's your quiet habit of surrendering, getting used to staying small, silent, and self-sacrificing just to keep things calm. Stoic philosophy teaches that calmness is a virtue, and you cannot preserve that virtue if you keep placing yourself inside someone else's fire. Walk away, not because you fear them, but because you honor your own peace. 5. The blamer and excuse maker. Among the types of people to avoid, there is one that may initially seem harmless. They don't shout, don't show violence, don't visibly hurt you, but they plant a subtle, contagious, and dangerous mindset, the habit of blaming. The blamer always has a reason not to do what must be done, always someone to fault when things go wrong, and always a story to justify why they can't move forward. It might be family, the economy, the past, fate, or anything except themselves. I once had a friend, smart, capable, even passionate at one time. But after a few failures, he started to change. Whenever asked about his plans, he'd say the timing wasn't right, that opportunities were for those with connections, that society was unfair. And whenever someone succeeded, instead of learning, he'd say they were lucky, well-connected, or cheated the system. Over time, I realized the real loss wasn't his lack of success. It was that he no longer believed he could change. He built a wall of words and excuses to hide a simple truth. He was afraid of responsibility. The issue is not failure, we all fall, but our attitude toward failure. The excuse maker doesn't learn from mistakes because they never admit to making them. They lack patience because they believe that if success doesn't come quickly, life must be unfair. And if you're around them long enough, they'll teach you to live passively, a worldview where everything is out of your hands, where effort seems pointless. Seneca once said, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." This was meant for those who always blame. They don't lack opportunity. They waste it by constantly inventing reasons to delay. And the dangerous part is, they never go alone. They drag others into their spiral of justification, making you wonder, am I trying too hard? Am I asking too much of myself? Stoic philosophy stresses that the only thing we truly control is ourselves, our thoughts, actions, and responses. The excuse maker rejects this truth and will try to convince you to do the same. Don't believe it. If someone in your life constantly talks about why things can't be done, ask yourself, could they be the reason you're not moving forward? Choose those who push you to act, not those who help you justify standing still. In the end, the rational person doesn't search for excuses. They search for the next step. Even if it's small and slow, it's real. 6. The doubt planter. Not everyone who holds you back does so with bad intentions. Some won't loudly oppose you, won't belittle you directly, won't openly reject your plans or dreams. Instead, they plant one simple question. Are you sure? And that question, repeated often enough, can make you doubt yourself. The doubt planter isn't necessarily malicious. They might be a close friend, a family member, or someone you love. But what makes them dangerous is this. They speak from a place of concern, yet what they pass on is their own fear and limitation. I once saw a friend dream of opening her own cafe after years of working for others. She saved every penny, studied the business, and poured her heart into it. But every time she shared her plan with a cousin, she didn't get support. Only soft remarks like, "The market's really competitive now. Are you sure customers will come? Could you be risking too much?" At first, she laughed it off, but slowly those questions took hold. She lost sleep, worried more, and eventually postponed her plans indefinitely. Not because she lacked ability, but because she began to believe she did. The doubt planter never tells you to quit. They just nudge you toward imagining the worst, until you quit on your own. They don't need to win. They just need you to stop trying. And the terrifying part is, if you're not mindful, you won't even realize that the fear you feel wasn't originally yours. Once it takes hold, you start doubting everything. Your abilities, your dreams, even your right to take risks. Stoic philosophy teaches that we are not disturbed by events, but by our perception of them. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "You don't have to have an opinion about something." In this case, you don't have to accept someone else's doubt. The rational person doesn't let others decide their dreams, nor allow others' fears to define their limits. Observe closely. Who makes you think smaller every time you think big? Who makes you hesitate every time you're about to act? Who causes you to question the very things that once brought you joy, excitement, and resolve? If someone is always present at the moments when you shrink, they may not be the one to walk with you to the end. Keeping doubt at a safe distance is rationality, but letting it lead is defeat. And if not recognized in time, the doubt planter will kill more dreams than failure that ever could. 7. The subtle manipulator. Among all toxic personalities, the subtle manipulator is the hardest to recognize. They don't get angry, don't make demands, and don't threaten you outright. On the contrary, they often appear gentle, intelligent, seemingly attentive, and make you feel understood. But beneath that polished surface lies a carefully crafted plan to make you doubt yourself, abandon your boundaries, and gradually live according to their design. They don't drag you toward them. They make you walk there on your own. No force, no pressure. Just a few emotional words, a few performances of wounded vulnerability, and suddenly you begin discarding what you once believed was right. I once knew someone like that, always kind, always there when I needed, always saying things that made me feel special. But gradually, I noticed that whenever I declined something that didn't feel right, he would respond with calculated silence. No accusations, no backlash, just a heavy quiet that made me feel guilty, questioning whether I was being insensitive. And when I finally agreed to something I didn't want, everything returned to normal. Over time, I no longer knew where my boundaries were, what was true, what I was truly responsible for, and what roles I had been manipulated into playing. The most skilled manipulators don't harm you through actions. They do it through feelings. They make you feel guilty for standing by your principles, selfish for rejecting the unreasonable, and convince you that sacrificing yourself is necessary to keep the relationship. They use your kindness as a tool, their gentleness as a form of pressure, and worst of all, they make you believe you are the problem. Once caught in that web, they don't need to control you. You begin controlling yourself, all in service of their agenda. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That means anyone who tries to alter your behavior through emotion rather than reason is stepping into a domain you must defend. Stoicism doesn't teach us to fight others with rage. It teaches us to anchor ourselves in clarity. When you feel compelled to soften your tone just to avoid upsetting someone, even when you're speaking the truth, when you feel the need to surrender your self-respect for the sake of peace, step back and reassess the situation. A rational person sets boundaries not to isolate others, but to preserve their own values. You don't need to argue, to be angry, or to criticize. You only need one thing: to not let anyone manipulate how you think, feel, or act. The manipulator only has power when you hand over control, and once you stand firmly in your reason, their game has no more stage. 8. The Undisciplined Drifter. The undisciplined person isn't necessarily bad. They don't openly harm you, nor do they actively drag you down. But their lifestyle, undirected, lacking discipline, and constantly chasing short-term comfort, quietly affects you more than you think. They're the type who believe life is for enjoyment, who question why one should be so strict with oneself, who say, as long as today's fun, that's enough. At first glance, they seem harmless, even easygoing and likable. But if you aren't vigilant, you'll soon lose your own boundaries and begin living like them, led by emotion, ruled by impulse, avoiding every challenge that requires effort. I once had a group of friends like that. They did nothing overtly wrong, but every time I spoke of wanting to train, read, or pursue a goal, the usual response was, "Relax, you only live once." When I declined a night out drinking, they laughed. "You're way too hard on yourself." At first, I didn't think it was a big deal, but slowly, I began feeling awkward for choosing a different path. I felt odd, too rigid, too serious. And then at some point, I started letting discipline slip, delaying tasks, telling myself, just for today, it won't matter. Until just today became a week, then a month. And I realized no one dragged me down. I had let go of my own control. Stoic philosophy doesn't reject joy, nor does it promote self-denial. What sages like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius emphasized is the need to place moderation above pleasure, to distinguish between fleeting enjoyment and lasting peace. The undisciplined often mistake freedom for recklessness. They believe doing whatever they want is freedom, but in truth, it's a form of slavery. Slavery to emotion, temptation, and stagnation. And if you stay in that environment long enough, you will lose your willpower, the very foundation of all Stoic virtues. Ask yourself, do those around you help you become a better version of yourself? Or do they make you feel wrong for trying? Perhaps they don't intend to hold you back, but if they live undisciplined lives and you stay too close for too long, you'll begin to see discipline as a burden. And when that happens, you'll lose direction, not because you lack purpose, but because you no longer have the strength to sustain it. A rational person understands that immediate comfort is often a trap. True joy comes from mastering yourself, pushing past limits, and knowing that today you are not ruled by emotion. Keeping distance from the undisciplined isn't arrogance. It's an act of self-preservation, because if you want to go far, you cannot walk with those who wish only to stay still. And if you seek growth, there's nothing to learn from someone who avoids growing. 9. The time waster. Of all the precious resources you possess, time is the one thing you can never reclaim. You can earn back money, rebuild reputation, and heal emotional wounds. But every passing moment is gone forever. That's why the person who wastes your time, whether deliberately or not, is someone you must be most cautious of. Not because they're malicious, but because they fail to recognize that your time is just as valuable as theirs. They call just to complain for hours without seeking advice, invite you to kill time while you're building something for the future, or drag you into conversations and situations that go nowhere without any intent to change. I once felt exhausted, not because I worked too much, but because I was too lenient with my time. A friend often called on weekends to chat, an hour-long call repeating things they'd said a dozen times before. A coworker frequently invited me for fun coffee breaks, which became sessions for unloading personal stress. At first, I saw it as connection, a form of social care. But then I noticed, every time I returned to my work, I was foggy, tired, uninspired, carrying burdens that weren't mine. Over time, those fun little moments piled up into weeks of delay, and dreams that were progressing quietly stalled without me noticing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That is not pessimism. It's a call to live deliberately. If you let others use your time carelessly, you're letting them use your life meaninglessly. And worse still, when you allow people to waste your time, you're teaching them that you don't value it yourself. The time waster isn't necessarily useless. They may be smart, even interesting, but they haven't learned to live with focus. And if you don't set firm boundaries, they'll pull you into their scattered rhythm, where every grand goal is traded for a few hours of meaningless distraction. What makes them dangerous is their familiarity. You hesitate to say no. You want to keep things pleasant. You fear being seen as distant or arrogant. But the truth is, saying no isn't unkind. It's a strategic choice to protect your time, your energy, and ultimately, your life from fragmentation. Stoic philosophy teaches you to guard your mind like a fortress, and that applies to your time as well. If someone doesn't respect your time, they don't deserve any share of your life. Be polite. Be clear. But be firm. Time doesn't come back, and the rational person knows what's worthy of a piece of their finite life. 10. The one who carries negative energy. Some people enter a room and immediately make the atmosphere heavier. Not because they're loud, not because they do anything wrong, but simply because they bring a kind of energy that makes you shrink back, feel drained, and lose motivation. The person who carries negative energy doesn't need to complain endlessly or constantly talk about their problems. Sometimes it's just the way they view everything through a lens of pessimism, disappointment, and an invisible fatigue. They offer no inspiration, no hope, only a quiet infusion of sadness and stagnation into the space around them. I once sat next to a colleague like that for months. Every day working with him was filled with complaints about the boss, company policies, personal life, even trivial things like the weather or lunch. Nothing was good enough. Nothing ever seemed worth being content about. At first, I tried listening, thinking I was showing empathy. But the more I listened, the more I found myself becoming harsher, more tired, and beginning to see life through a negative lens I had never worn before. Only when I created clear distance did I realize how much I had been affected. Those who carry negative energy often don't realize they're dragging others down. They believe they're just being realistic, sharing, or wanting someone to understand them. But in truth, their emotions leak out like a toxic gas, silently spreading and clinging to the minds of others. And if you don't consciously draw boundaries, you'll soon carry their weariness as if it were your own. Stoic philosophy teaches, it's not what happens to us that causes suffering, but how we interpret it. When you're near someone who sees everything through a negative lens, you begin to shift your own perception. From being proactive, you become hesitant. From clarity, you fall into doubt. And when you lose your ability to see the world with rational clarity, you also lose a part of your natural, positive energy. You don't have to completely cut them off, but you must know when to remain silent, when to step back, and when to choose quiet as your form of resistance. A rational person doesn't let another's emotions dim their inner light. And sometimes, the best way to preserve that light is to stay away from places already sinking into darkness. 11. The drama creator. Some people can't live without chaos. They don't wait for drama. They create it. They don't seek peace. They feel lost in silence. The drama creator is someone who always has a story, always has conflict, always has someone to complain about or a situation to exaggerate. And the real danger is this. They don't just live in disorder, they pull you into it. If you're not careful, you'll get swept into irrelevant stories, unnecessary conflicts, and emotionally charged conversations you never wanted to be part of. I once had a coworker who made every day feel like the worst day of her life. Minor issues were blown out of proportion. Tiny misunderstandings became internal disputes. Baseless rumors stirred up the whole office. She was always at the center of the storm, not because others drew her in, but because she couldn't sit still if things were too quiet. And it was hard not to get affected. Every time she messaged or called, it came with an urgent tone, a critical situation to share, a warning about someone you should watch out for. And just like that, a simple workday became complicated, only because you weren't alert enough to end the call sooner. Stoic philosophy teaches us to master our emotions and to not get drawn into things beyond our control. The drama creator does not live by that principle. They live through reaction, through exaggerated emotion, through escalating every situation to feel alive. But that's not real living, it's emotional depletion. And if you let them drag you into their play, you won't just lose peace, you'll lose the ability to discern what truly deserves your attention. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You don't have to have an opinion about something." In this context, you don't have to take part in someone else's script. You don't have to answer messages at midnight just to hear a tangled story that adds no value. And more importantly, you have the right to step away, quietly, firmly, and rationally, to protect the stillness of your own mind. A rational person does not allow themselves to become an unwilling audience to endless drama. They choose to mute, to step back, to let silence speak for them. Because they know Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every story deserves a part to be played. I don't write these things from the perspective of someone who's always steadfast or never made mistakes. On the contrary, I've allowed many of these types of people into my life, sometimes out of sympathy, sometimes out of politeness, and sometimes simply because I lacked the courage to say no. I've stayed silent in the face of manipulation, over-empathized with those who played the victim, and let my precious time slip away in meaningless conversations. And it was precisely those experiences that taught me this. Peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from knowing who deserves to walk with you and who must be kept at a safe distance. Stoic philosophy is not coldness. It is compassion, first and foremost, for yourself. So, be brave enough to set boundaries. Dare to walk away from what pulls you backward. If you found this content helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future insights. And remember, the wise do not build their lives on noisy ground. They build it in the stillness of a well-guarded mind. See you in the next video.